Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Noah Kitty, and together with Hazzan Berkowitz and Cantorial Soloist Harley, Greene, I welcome and thank you for joining us on this beautiful Shabbat evening. Your presence makes our delight in the holiday all the sweeter. Before we begin this evening's service, I wanted to say a few words, and typically I speak about the week before, the week that was, and generally there's always been something typically unfortunate in the news to comment on and to offer a suggestion of where to go to from here. And when I look at the week that was, what I noticed was it was kind of what I remember as a relatively ordinary news week, meaning there was certainly a number of terrible things that happened, and there were actually a number of very positive things that happened. In other words, it was on balance a regular week, if you accept regular under pandemic conditions, with the world kind of in a constant state of being awry. But it was level. And what I wanted to do was share with you that in the Torah portion we read that God led the Israelites out once they had crossed over the Red Sea. God led them out not by a direct route, but by a roundabout way, so that it might take them longer, but it was assumed that it would be a safer route. So in this case, they exchanged time for a little more certainty. And that's what I invite you to consider going into Shabbat, that we give a little more time so we can be a little more certain before we jump to comment on something, before we leap to a judgment or conclusion, before truly the thing that we are commenting on hasn't finished its action, but already we're complaining about it. Instead, perhaps for this Shabbat, experiment with the feeling of holding back judgment, of just taking a wait and see attitude, maybe just processing the feeling through the character trait of Rahmanis, of compassion, that may be the object of your criticism, has a context that you are not aware of. And perhaps if you knew that if such and such was also happening, that perhaps you wouldn't feel the way you do. So in the name of let's increase peace where we may, I invite you again to embrace the quality of patience, of letting things take their time, and enter Shabbat with a calm and a sense of peace and centeredness that comes when you release the need for judgment or complaint. We begin our service with the lighting of the Shabbat candles. Thank you, Jerry.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue together with the Kiddush for Friday evening.
Okay, everyone, it's time for the Kiddush. Vayehi erev vayehi voker yom hashishi, vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz, v'chol tzevam, vayechal Elohim bayom hashvi, melakto asher asa, vayishbot bayom hashvi, mikol melakto asher asa, vayivarech Elohim et yom hashvi, vayikadesh oto, ki vo shabbat mikol melakto, asher bara Elohim la'asot. Savri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kodesho b'ahava u'b'ratzon hinchilanu, Zikaro lema'aseh bereshit, ki hu yom techila lemekra'e kodesh, zecher letziat mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, V'shabbat kadshecha v'ahava u'v'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
We begin our practice of singing our way into Shabbat, beginning with Shalom Aleichem, peace be upon you. May we have an open heart to be able to greet everyone we meet with the blessing of Shalom Aleichem. Thank you, Harley.
Thank you, Rabbi Noah. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShoret, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Borchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Good Shabbos, everyone.
We continue our joyous entry into Shabbat with Lechu Neranena. Thank you, Jerry.
Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Ladonai. Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Ladonai. Naria, Naria, Zuri Shenu, Ganma Fala Betada. Naria, Naria, Zuri Shenu, Bezmirot Nariano. Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Ladonai. Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Lechu Neranena, Ladonai.
We continue together with a beautiful psalm inviting us to bring all kinds of instruments of joy, of music, of making a beautiful sound in our delight of Shabbat. Thank you, Harley.
Mizmor LeDavid, Havu Ladonai B'nei Elim, Havu Ladonai Kavod V'oz, Havu Ladonai Kavod Shemo, Ishtachavu Ladonai Behadrat Kodesh, Kol Adonai Ahamayim, El HaKavod Hirim, Adonai Amayim Rabim, Kol Adonai Ba'koach, Kol Adonai Behador, Kol Adonai Shover Arozim, Vayishaber Adonai et Arze Halvanon, Vayakiden Kamo Egel, Lebanon Vesirion, Kamo Ven Reimim, Kol Adonai Chotzef Lavosesh, Kol Adonai Yochil Midbar, Yochil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai Yechole Ayalot, Vayechesof Yaroth, Uvehecholo Kulo, Omer Kavod, Adonai Lamabul Yoshav, Vayeshev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Hoz Li'amo Yitain, Adonai Yevorech et Amo Vashalom.
We continue with the wonderful thought, Lecha Dodi, come my beloved. Imagine moving through your day with that kind of invitation, come my beloved. Now as we move to enter into Shabbat, that certainly is the message. Come my beloved. Thank you, Jerry.
Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi Lekrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Lekabela, Lecha Dodi Lekrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Lekabela, Shamor v'Zachor v'Dibur Echad, Yishmi'anu El HaMeichad, Adonai Echad, U'Shemo Echad, L'Shem Tiferet L'Gila. Lecha Dodi, Lecha Dodi Lekrat Kala, B'nei Shabbat Lekabela, Lecha Dodi Lekrat Kala, בני שבת לקבלה, מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, ומצאי איתו בהפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקרא כלה, בני שבת לקבלה, לך דודי לקרא כלה, בני שבת לקבלה. התעוררי, כי באורך ומאורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת גאלה, בני שבת לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת גאלה, בני שבת לקבלה. והיו למשיסה שעושייך, ורחקו כל מבעלייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהייך, כמשוש חתן הכלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת גאלה, בני שבת לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת גאלה, בני שבת לקבלה. בואי בשלום העטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, דוח אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת גאלה, בני שבת לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת גאלה, בני שבת לקבלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת גאלה, בני שבת לקבלה, לך דודי לקראת גאלה, בני שבת לקבלה.
We continue together with the Chetzi Kaddish, signaling the conclusion of the Kabbalat Shabbat portion of our service.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, וילמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בגלה, בגלה, ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולם ביומיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו, לעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן.
We continue together with the Baruch, the formal beginning of our evening service, and an invitation to, just make sure we're put together properly as though we were preparing to meet a great ruler. Indeed, that is the Baruch, a reminder to acknowledge before whom we stand.
Baruch hu atah Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch hu atah Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch hu Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch hu atah Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. Le'olam, le'olam va'ed.
We continue together with Ahavat Olam, a beautiful prayer reminding us that our world is filled with love.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Lamchata, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadata. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, v'shavenu v'kumeinu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki heim chayenu, Ve'orech yameinu, uvahem negeh, yomam v'layla, yomam v'layla. Ve'ahavatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
We continue together with the Shema and the Ahavta. As we prepare for these two central prayers, I invite you to think about the introduction to the wonderful Song of the Sea that occurs in this week's Torah portion. And it begins by stating all of Israel sang the song. And it's one of the few times that all of Israel did anything together. But one of the central things we absolutely do together is the Shema, that we all declare, no matter where we are on the observance performance spectrum, that we say the Shema. We say it with our hearts. We understand that God is one, that there is a singular creator and is infinite and omnipresent, and is interacting with us all the time, every day, where we are. We continue with the Shema and the Ahavta.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. V'ahavta es Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavecha, u'v'chol nafshecha, u'v'chol me'odecha, v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavacha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinam tom levanecha, v'dibarta bom, B'shiftecha b'veitecha, u'v'leftecha b'derech, u'v'shafkecha u'v'kumecha, u'kashartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu l'totafot bein einecha, u'kasavtom al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha.
We continue together with the Micha Mocha, the wonderful song that asks a rhetorical question. Micha Mocha, who is like you, Ba'elim Adonai, among all the little godlets in heaven that was present, that was part of this week's Torah portion. And we continue singing it again with Jerry. Thank you.
Micha Mocha, Micha Mocha, Micha Mocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha, Ledar Bakodesh, Norat Tehilot, Osef Vele, Malchucha Uvanecha, Bokeh Hayam Lifnei Moshe Miriam. Zelianu, Ameru, Adonai Imloch Le'olam Va'ed. Micha Mocha, Micha Mocha, Micha Mocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha, Ledar Bakodesh, Norat Tehilot, Osef Vele, ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל מיכה מוכה מיכה מוכה מיכה מוכה באלים אדוני מיכה מוכה נרדם בקודש נורת תהילות אוסף אלך אוסף אלך אוסף אלך.
We continue together with a Hashkivenu, the so-called evening prayer, the prayer in which we acknowledge that going to bed in peace is a blessing, that we are able to do it through God's grace, and waking up to a world renewed, but still the world that we left behind when we fell asleep. This also is a blessing. May we join in together with the Hashkivenu and express our appreciation and gratitude for the blessing of going to bed in peace.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu shoreinu lekayim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu shoreinu lekayim. Ushmor tzeitenu L'chaim shalom ata b'yad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu shoreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu shoreinu l'chaim. Ushmor tzeitenu לחיים ושלום, מעתה ועד עולם. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, lehamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, lehamidenu shomreinu lechayim.
We continue together with the Amidah, the central prayer of our evening service, and again, an opportunity for us to spend a few moments in a gentle conversation with our Creator. As we prepare for the Amidah this evening, I invite you to take note that the name of Israel's eternal enemy, Amalek, is introduced also in this week's Torah portion. And who or what is Amalek? We're told that he was the grandson of Esau and always had a hatred for Israel, for the Israelites. And therefore, as the Israelites had crossed the Red Sea and they're tired and exhausted and emotionally drained, that was when Amalek attacked the people, but only the weak and those who were dropping from behind. So they didn't attack, the warriors. They attacked folks who could barely keep up. And for this reason, we are instructed absolutely to remember to forget Amalek. In fact, when a Torah scribe is preparing their nib, they dip it in ink and write out Amalek and then cross it out. That is our attitude towards Amalek. And I invite you to consider what might be an Amalek in your life. What kind of limiting behavior, what kind of limiting thoughts dog you throughout the day? As you're going to complete a project, do you hear a little voice in your head, well, maybe it's not good enough, and maybe no one will like it, and maybe no one likes me, and maybe they wanted to do something else? And do you start thinking of 1,000 different reasons why whatever you're engaged in somehow has lost its value in some kind of arithmetic? I will propose to you that is your Amalek. That is something that haunts you, that keeps you from doing and feeling and really being your best. And know that those thoughts, yes, they're your enemy, and they're not true. They're not true. You are good enough. People are interested in what you have to say. What you have to say is worthwhile. You have value. You have value. As we go into the Amidah, I invite you to turn around and respond to your Amalek. I have value.
Adonai Sefatai Tiftach, Ufi Agid Tehillah. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, ולחוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי מתים אתה, רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, בחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד. והעיקר לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל. והעיקר לא לפחד כלל. כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד, גשר צר מאוד.
We continue together with a Mishaberach. We pray that anyone challenged with an illness be healed completely in body and spirit. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu, Avraham, Yitzhak v'Yaakov, Sar, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, Hu Yevarech et HaCholin. The name on our healing list this week includes Sidney Honeg, Cy Robin, Rose Franco Granowetter, Jesse Fish, Daniel Eric Marcus, Kimberly Pierce, Julie Shaver, Vicky Dopkin, James Basmagian, Susan Field, Sheila Nudis Cutler, A.C. Robertson, Suzanne Wilder, Patty Harris, Melissa Vacalis, Karen Tanney, Arnell Booker, Ed Booker, Jamie Meadows, Freddie Rodriguez, Robin Gross, David Walmetz, Rick Greenberg, Dan Friedman, Lori Melman, Roberto Correa. I also invite you to say the name of anyone you'd like to send some healing energies to. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal all who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and of spirit. And let us say, Amen.
V'shebeirach avoteinu Mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. V'shebeirach imotenu Mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. So, in the Parsha B'Shalach, a lot happens. But before I move into talking about what happens in this particular Parsha, I thought I'd take a quick overview of how we got to where we are now in Torah. So if we look back at how Torah structured the community, we see that it began as a matriarchy, frankly, with Sarah and Rivka really calling the shots, demanding from their husbands which son was going to be prominent and just how things are going to be. That changed with Jacob, turned from matriarchal to patriarchal, and from Jacob moved directly into a tribal unit, the 12 tribes. We are familiar with the names. And from there moved into a nation. And of course, it was as a tribal unit that the Israelites moved down to Egypt, and it was as a nation they emerged. So what are the particulars of the change? What is different for the Israelites now that they have become a nation? And I think it is so essential to understand how this event is foundational to our understanding of who we are and who we are beholding to for who we are. And the entire theology and tradition around the Exodus is, of course, that God freed us from Egyptian slavery to become a nation, God's chosen. And that's kind of a heroic way to put it. And I would actually like to offer a different way, that we were freed from slavery. And what is slavery? Slavery is not having agency over our present or our future. Not having agency over our present or our future. It has nothing to do with be free, little bird, to go explore the planet and all the things you can learn about it. That's not freedom. That's not what we were freed to do. We were freed from slavery, from not having agency, to the freedom of having agency. And what was that agency? The description began in the beginning of the book of Exodus and continues this week What is that agency? What are we supposed to choose between? We're supposed to choose between accepting the yoke of the commandments, understanding that we are in a covenantal relationship with our Creator, or the freedom to reject that idea, to reject the idea that we have any belonging to anybody, to reject the idea that we have any responsibility to anybody, to reject the idea that really we can't do whatever we can do for the simple reason that we can do it. And what has been the result? I believe it's actually very tragic. The result is we have made a world that is safe for sociopaths. Rabbi, that's pretty extreme. And it's like, no, there's article after article I've read about how being a sociopath is actually a leg up in the business world. Because what is a sociopath? It's someone who's incapable of feelings of empathy, of remorse, of regret, noted by their cunning and manipulative behavior. And so, yes, psychopaths in the world, in the society that we've created today, they're some of our biggest stars. We dedicate movies to the most psychopathic. We rush to see them. We praise them. It's hard to understand how much I believe we've drifted from the idea of proper freedom. And so now I'd like to return a bit to talking about the Torah portion, Bishalach, because actually a lot happens in this Torah portion. So the Torah portion opens, the Israelites have left Egypt. They're running away. They've got everything they own on their backs. They've managed to take a fair bit of wealth from the Egyptians as well. It will serve later a little bit in the story, but nonetheless, off they went. And they were led by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar by fire at night, God leading the way. And interestingly, the way was roundabout. If you ever saw a graphic of the path of the Israelites as described in Torah, you'll see that instead of going from Egypt directly into the Promised Land, which is kind of a straight line just south of the Mediterranean, they went down the Sinai and back up and down again and a little bit around. So yes, there actually is quite a bit of theology attached to that, but physically they were literally and theologically turned around. So they had these wonderful pillars, God's signs for them to lead them. And finally they arrived to the Sea of Reeds, and the chariots are thundering behind them. And Moses lifts his arm and the sea parts, and the movies don't do it justice, but that's it. It is how they described, where Moses lifted his arm, the seas parted, 2 walls of water that the Israelites passed through. As the last of the Israelites passed through, the Egyptians and their chariots followed close behind. The waters came back together. The Egyptians and their chariots, their horses and riders, were thrown into the sea, all to perish. It was an extraordinary event. And at the end of the Parsha, the conclusion of the Parsha, we are actually introduced to Amalek. And who is Amalek? Sometimes you'll remember Amalek as the story, kind of like the boogeyman, but truly, Amalek is the eternal enemy of the Israelite people, the Jewish people. As described in the Torah, Amalek was a grandson of Esau and was said to have a particular hatred of the Israelites due to what he perceived as the ill treatment of his grandfather. So as the Israelites were making their way past the Red Sea, they had just experienced this tremendous miracle, and they're marching and they're exhausted. And of course, there's a lot of them, so the trail is long, and of course, at the rear, it gets thin. And it was those people that Amalek attacked. The trailers, the weakest, the ones who could least defend themselves. So for us, Amalek is that which goes after our most vulnerable and sensitive parts. So I offer to you this thought to take through Shabbat as we look forward truly to a wonderful period of calm and of peace. To consider for yourself what you might understand as a covenantal relationship, and what part of Amalek is fighting you back from that. What is it that you might want to achieve? What connection that do you want to make? What piece of growth do you want to embrace or master? And what kind of Amalek is holding you back? Because it's true, we're always, no matter who we are, we're always challenged by those kinds of thoughts, those dark whispers, those you're not really smart enough, you're not really good enough, you're not really holy enough, you're not really enough somehow. It's an Amalek. It's an enemy. It's a false voice. It is that which is keeping you from enjoying not just the benefits, but the joy, the bliss, the delight of feeling that you are in a covenantal relationship, that you are connected, that you are a piece of the ongoing work of creation, that we are partners with God. We are not enemies of God, that we acknowledge that we are responsible for the way the world works. I hope you embrace this thought, knowing that you can make a difference. As we know, we don't have to take on the entirety of the issue. We take on what we can. So if creating peace and pursuing peace for you is planting a butterfly garden, then that is a wonderful, wonderful achievement to have that certainly will bring beauty and appreciation. We all do the work that we can. We are all connected. We are all, hopefully, choosing the freedom to take responsibility and turn the world back into the garden it was when we found it. Shabbat Shalom. We continue our service with the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gedula v'yotzeh bereshit, shelo asanu kagoye haratzot, v'lo samanu kemishpachot ha'adamah, shelo sam velkenu kohem, v'gohor aleinu kechol hamonom, v'anachnu korim umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlochim hakadosh baruch hu. Shehu note shamayim v'yosed oretz, u'moshav yikaron b'shamayim mima'al, u'shchina ruso, begohe maromim, hu Eloheinu ein od, emet malkeinu efes ulato, kad katu b'torato, ve'adato hayom v'hashevota elevavacha, ki Adonai hu Elohim, b'shamayim mima'al, v'al haaretz mitachad ein hod.
May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace.
Kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimloch le'olam voed, v'nemar, v'haya Adonai, l'melech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu, yiyeh Adonai echad, Ushemo echad.
We continue together with a prayer for our country. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and compassion. May they govern with justice and forbearance. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and in spirit. And let us say, Amen. We continue together with the Mourner's Kaddish. The most recent deaths in our community include Shirley Caro, remembered by Nina Lampert, John Burleson, remembered by Howie Sorkin, Jeffrey Lisberg, remembered by Jerry Besson, Ron Rich, remembered by Harley Greene, Tom Carr, remembered by Jay Hyder, Charles Usher, remembered by Harley Greene, Cecilia Greenberg, remembered by Howard Chaykin and Daniel Smits, Barbara Ray Baker, remembered by Howard Chaykin and Daniel Smits, Karen Lee Squire, remembered by Don Squire, Robert Lewis, remembered by James Basmajian, Jack Meslish, remembered by Harley Greene, Edagale Schatz, remembered by Harley Greene, John Carson, remembered by Julie Carson, Ron Lampert, remembered by Nina Lampert, Daniel Wetzler, remembered by Arnell Booker, Stephen Hoffman, remembered by Nina Lampert, Saw Silverman, remembered by Marilyn Silverman. Our yahrzeit list includes Frank Kitchen, Elias Lichtenstein, Esther Penn, remembered by Gloria Stein and Dan Friedman, Joyce Esther Ruby, remembered by Charlie Ruby, Claire Untracht, remembered by Harley Greene. Calvin Kaufman, remembered by Gary Brown. Joseph Lennis, Joseph Budashewitz, remembered by Phil Budashewitz. Anita Fisher DeLider, Birdie Schweizer, Herman Barkin. Nellie Schoengut, remembered by David Schoengut. Jerry Franzmeyer, remembered by Michael Pierce. Rose Melman, remembered by Harley Greene. We continue together with the Mourner's Kaddish.
Yiskadal v'yiskadal shemei Rabbi. B'yamad yivrach Yosef yamlich malchusei. B'chaye chon uv'yomei chon uv'chaye dechol. Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'yizman kariv v'yimru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mavarach le'olam olamei almaya. Yisborach v'yishtabach v'yispar v'yisroman v'yisnaseh. V'yisadar v'yisaleh v'yisalal. Shmei dekudasha b'richu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'amiram b'yamal v'yimru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Our concluding song, Adon Olam.
Adon Olam asher malach B'terem kol yitzir lihivra, Li'ed na'asa b'chefto kol, Azai melech shemo nikra. Ve'acharei kichlot hakol, Levado yimloch nora. Ve'hu haya, ve'hu hoveh, Ve'hu yeh b'tifara. Ve'hu echad ve'ein sheni, Le'amshil le'hachbira. Ve'li reishit ve'li tachlit, Ve'lo ha'oz ve'ha'misra. Ve'hu eli v'chai gawali, Ve'tzurchev li b'yetzara. Ve'hu nisi umanos li, Le'anakosi b'yom ekra. Ve'ado afkid ruchi, Ve'eti sham ve'agira. Ve'imruchi geviati, Adonai li ve'lo ira. Adon olam asher malach, B'terem kol yitzir nivra. Le'ed na'asa b'chefto kol, Azai melech shemo nikra. Good Shabbos, everyone.
We conclude our service with a blessing for everyone and us all. Yivarechacha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May you feel God's presence within you always, and may you find peace. Amen v'amen, and good Shabbos.